nothing but Star Wars. Give me the Star Wars. Don't let them end.
Bienvenidos, worldwide fans of the planet's hottest entertainment with an edge. You got Jaime En Fuego here for another installment of my namesake program, Enfuegotainment. That is right, you can just call me Fuego for short, and welcome. I am so very happy to have you here for what I'm going to call a Rapido Fuego review, and I've done one of these before. It was like kind of a test run when I was first like restarting my channel and getting some stuff crank-a-lankin', but the reason I'm doing this is because this isn't a film review, and it's like it's a weird micro-series review of sorts, and that's because I'm putting this up the day before my review of Star Wars: The Clone Wars movie. That's right, so it is the third feature proper that I'm going to be covering because I'm doing one of these a month in timeline order, okay? So I've already done Episode 1, that's right, Phantom Menace, call it as you will, and same with Attack of the Clones, which I did in February, so, you know, it was interesting revisiting those and just kind of getting back into the groove, and I'm going to be doing all of the films in timeline order, as I said, leading up to Episode 9 in December, but so this, the reason I'm doing just a brief look at this is because in between Episodes 2 and 3, there is something not called The Clone Wars, there was Clone Wars. Yes, Clone Wars. And so this was on Cartoon Network, and it was essentially like, it started out for Volume 1, which is what I have right here, as a micro-series where it was like these little 3 to 5 minute vignettes, and it was jumping around in the Clone Wars, covering all these different members of the Jedi Council, like Homie with the huge head, and, you know, Yoda, and, you know, various others on, there's some stuff on aquatic planets, there's some stuff on an ice planet, you've got Dantooine, I believe, is where Mace Windu is doing some stuff, and he saves this kid who's out in, like, this desert, you know, like, wilderness farm type area and stuff like that. And then this series, just to give a little more context, was with coming out between episodes 2 and 3, it was just to kind of be that stopgap to keep interest because of the fact that there's 3 years between these movies, you know? And so, you know, you had 99 to 2002, and then you had 2002 to 2005. And so 2003, 2004, and 2005 was where they did these two series. So as I said, the first one just kind of hops around, and it's these short little 3 to 5 minute episodes, and yet it is telling one lengthy story. So they go, like one of the initial big battles is where they go to like this banker's planet of sorts, and there's some, that's where we get introduced, if I remember correctly, it's either on that planet or in those first few episodes to, boy, her name is Asajj, I'm trying to remember, it's like Ventress or something like that, Ventress, yeah, Asajj Ventress, and she's a pretty badass, chica who goes and she basically tells Dooku when they meet each other. That's right, she's not, I don't think she's on the banker's planet if I remember correctly. She actually just emerges from almost like this training ground with all these different species as the one that, you know, Dooku was like, okay, let's see what you got, girl. And she's going around, you know, with her dueling lightsabers and everything, claims she's a Sith. Dooku laughs at her, and yet he's still like, I'm going to use you as bait to lure young, you know, Anakin Skywalker, and to, you know, without giving like the complete plans, because he doesn't even know Sidious's complete plans, you know, for this. And so she's a really dope new character that I recall they expand upon, and she becomes a big thing in, you know, the Clone Wars. So, because this was essentially, at the end of the day, a pilot for what this movie was like a reboot pilot for, and then the long-standing Clone Wars series that lasted 5 seasons, and then a 6th season, which was Netflix original Lost Missions. But the genesis of the Clone Wars idea was this right here. And so, you know, Volume 1, like I said, jumping around between the different Jedis and everything, and how they're waging wars against, you know, these different evil droids that the Separatists have and stuff on all these different planets. And yet, it's really action-centric, and there's not a ton of dialogue. I mean, there is here and there, but it's you know, it's a war, as they even say in the behind-the-scenes footage. You know, the guy who created the series, well, co-created, and he was like the director and the person who developed it, Genndy Tartakovsky. Yeah, so he was the guy who was behind Samurai Jack, and he was brought on to do this, and so they were originally going to be just television commercials, apparently, which is why they were so short. But Lucasfilm enjoyed his treatment, and so for that reason, they were just like, okay, when we get to a second volume of it, yeah, let's give him more time. And so for the second volume, he got 15 minutes an episode, give or take, as opposed to, and that was for the third season, but the third season is what comprises the second volume. So volume 1 was seasons 1 and 2, short little, just bursts of storytelling, and then he was able to really just sink his teeth in with his creative team a little bit more for volume 2, with the episodes being a little bit longer. But I will admit, in some ways, I prefer the shorter approach, especially because on these two releases, you essentially watch them as one big movie, and so they're each about 70 minutes, like 60 and some change, and so the hopping around is one thing, but I really enjoyed the action in this. I did, and there is like this, I don't know what you would necessarily consider him as, this big like growing droid, whatever, like he's kind of like Grievous, almost like a pre-Grievous thing, and this is actually where they introduced General Grievous, is in Clone Wars. So for people who hadn't watched Clone Wars and they just jumped into episode 3, because this essentially leads from volume 2, the end of volume 2, it leads right into episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. So we're talking like the very last frames of volume 2, and the longer form episodes, the very last bits of the last episode are Palpatine, getting kidnapped by Plagueis, or excuse me, not by Plagueis, by Grievous, and getting wounded by Mace Windu and stuff, and that's why he's wheezing in episode 3 and everything. But it's interesting the way this series essentially just led right into episode 3. But if you were like me and you hadn't watched this at the time, because I hadn't, I was like, yeah, it's Cartoon Network, it's kid stuff, I'm just gonna watch the movies proper. I was like, who the hell is this, this droid kind of, he almost looked like some sort of species that had put like droid enhancements like all over his body, and he's welding, a bunch of lightsabers, and I'm like, who in the hell is this guy? So this is where it gives you the introduction of that character at the tail end of volume 1, so the end of the second season of the show, and it gives you interesting context, but there's an early fight that Obi-Wan has with this kind of pre-Grievous like droid looking dude, and he's slicing limbs off, and he ends up jumping in him to like slice open and burst the hell out of him because the guy keeps regenerating, and it's a really rad fight. There's actually some very dope action in this, being volume 1. Volume 2 though, with expanding into the 15-minute format, it was able to give a little bit more character development, so there's more dialogue and not as much action. And now I'm just remembering the battle that Ventress has with Anakin at the very end. It's really pretty dope-ski, man. But that's at the end of volume 1, and that's the last that we see of her. Yeah, so volume 2, it's a little on the sillier side. I will definitely give it that. It does show more of the fun and the camaraderie that we were expecting, that Obi-Wan hinted at in, episode 4, where he's talking with Luke, and he's like, yes, he was a good friend and a great warrior and all this stuff, as he's talking about Luke's father. So we get a little of their friendship, but we get some of the goofy humor that I think is more of a trademark of some of the prequels, and that is one thing that I'm not the biggest fan of with volume 2 of Clone Wars, not the Clone Wars, volume 2 of Clone Wars, just to specify. That's how they denote between these two at this point. But there is a very interesting couple beats in volume 2, especially where, with the Clone Wars escalating, they're like, okay, we need as many Jedi Knights as we can get. Let's actually, give Anakin, let's knight him, essentially. And there's disagreement on the main Jedi Council about this and everything, but it's a cool little discussion of a scene about the merits and the pros and the cons of actually pushing him through. And Obi-Wan is the one who argues for him to get it. He says Anakin, even though he hasn't gone through, the last of his tests and trials and everything, he has gone through enough things that equate that sort of rigorous, seeing what you're worth and whatnot. And yeah, it's actually it's a cool little beat, and it's a cool scene, and he ends up encountering something that is the equivalent of that anyway, when they end up on this planet, him and Obi-Wan, where a bunch of their male warriors of this particular alien species have all been kidnapped. And so Anakin goes into this cave, very similar to, you know, when Luke has to go, you know, with into like the cave type area in Empire, and kind of face his fears and everything, and, you know, whatnot, and be tested. But yeah, he sees basically what is, it's almost like, you know, writing on the wall, hieroglyphics sort of thing, you know, cave drawings, and it's very cool the way they animate the cave drawings and stuff, and it's not only telling, you know, background about that species and some stories of theirs, but it also mirrors Anakin and some things that is down the pipeline for him, including, you know, Padme, and, you know, a potential fate for her and stuff. So it's very coolly animated, and it's dope seeing him get all these blue, like almost like tattoo, like war type markings all over him. And he ends up finding out what has happened with all of these warriors that went missing, and how they've been experimented on almost. And it's actually, it's a weird side story. It's one that feels like it would be more in, you know, a young adult, or even just one of the side Legends novels or something, which is what, you know, the EU is now called. But yeah, I gotta say, it's so cool, and we are flashing back to the Battle of Coruscant, which is what basically we hear about in the crawl at the beginning of 3, and, you know, there's not much else beyond that that we see. We basically, it's like, now joining your story already in progress. So we actually get to see that, and we also see the cool thing about Mace Windu and Yoda observing, this is a ruse, this is a diversion. They're not going after the temple, you know, they're not going after, you know, I mean, all of these different things. It's like, why aren't they going after, you know, the actual Senate, and, you know, going after the younglings and whatnot? It's like, oh, because this is just to distract us from what they're actually trying to do, which is kidnap Palpatine. And so, as a whole, I didn't check out the animation because I wasn't the biggest Samurai Jack fan, and I know that got a little more young adult, a little more not just for kiddies, especially in like the last season, if I'm not mistaken. But just the look of the animation was not very realistic, and I wasn't too big on the style when I was in my teens, when, you know, the prequels were coming out. And so I was like, nope, not going to check it out. So this was actually my first time watching it in preparation for this review, and then also for the review of this, which you're going to be seeing coming here on the 24th of March, a very special day. But yeah, so as a whole, I stand corrected. This is actually pretty dope, and it's something that you can easily get through. Watching both of these, which is one like big, almost animated movie in and of its own right, it's still shorter than any of the prequels. So you can sit down and have a pretty dope time watching it. Although I would say, as I mentioned, that I like Volume 1 a little bit better than number 2, just for the sheer fact that I thought some of the battle stuff was cool, and I like Ventress, and, you know, all that. But it's cool seeing the introduction of you know, Mr. General Grievous and everything, and just having some context for that character. It's also cool seeing stuff like, you know, you see Wookiees, you see all of these different species. One in particular, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's the weird, like, I don't even know how the hell you describe it. I'm not as up on my various species of the galaxy in Star Wars, with the exception of a few, but they have, like, when you see the species in it, 4 vocal cords, man, and it's a way that it's a means of trying to escape Grievous, as, you know, they are being pursued, these last few Jedi Knights that are on Coruscant, that are trying to protect Palpatine from being taken. And so that was dope, and yeah, I gotta say, this is a pretty dope series, and it's, for me, essential viewing if you are into, you know, just seeing everything that was at least considered canon. These are no longer canon now. Once Disney picked up, you know, Lucasfilm and everything, and now they own Fox too. Facepalm. But apparently this was superseded by the Clone Wars film and ongoing television series. But a lot of these ideas that were first presented here, as I said, kind of a pilot, and they were carried over into the film and the ongoing series. I have never watched the ongoing Clone Wars series. I've seen a couple episodes here and there, like the Darth Maul stuff, but I've never sat and watched all of it. I know I've had a lot of people tell me it's very similar to Rebels in the fact that some episodes are essential viewing, and then there's others that are just throwaway and they're just kind of meh. But I'm very stoked to check those out proper and to give you a proper review of this 2008 film. So yes, it came out after Episode 3. However, yeah, it's in timeline, as I said, you know, we all know the Clone Wars took place in between 2 and 3. So you're gonna see this review, and then, yes, right after you get done watching this review, if you're just waiting the very next day, boom, you're gonna get a review for this. So it's gonna be pretty fun. So I have been Jaime En Fuego. Yes, I didn't do my Bueno, Malo, and Feo, but that's because it was a Rapido Fuego review. I still think I ended up going on far longer than I had initially anticipated. But yeah, I actually really recommend this. I give it, I don't know if I would say it's certified Fuego, 4 stars, but it is definitely Bueno. So this gets 3 out of 5. 5 balls! That's right, 3 out of 5 Fuegos. Yeah, it's pretty lit and it's cool, and it's a little more mature than I was anticipating. So yes, I've been Jaime En Fuego, and you can find me on all social media sectors like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, which is where you are watching me here. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell so you get notifications about all of these further entries that will be coming down the pipeline as I cover all of the Star Wars content here in the year of 19. If you want to see stuff that is of the scarific variety, where I spend the predominance of my time on YouTube, that is going to be at youtube.com/The Horror Show channel, where we do film reviews, trailer reactions, convention coverage. The rest of the team does video game Let's Plays. You know, we have some new comedy sketches coming through the pipeline. So that is a pretty scarific spot here on the YouTubes as well. So I'm going to call it there, everybody, and I will use my new little thing that I am signing off all of my episodes with. So until the Reel of Ka comes around once more, haha, hasta luego, Cinemigos, and constant viewers around the planet, I am so very thankful that, yeah, you made the chance to check out this particular episode. And yes, I guess until the next bit of Star Wars coverage, which is going to be, that's right, the Clone Wars movie, may the Force be with you.